Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Farmington Board of Education regular meeting of Monday, March 18th, 2024. We'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I'll also make a comment to the audience. I do apologize for the orientation of our table, but we're here because we're be able to watch the video. So that's why we're set up this way. Okay, item 4, approval of minutes. May I get a motion to approve the minutes of the February 3rd, 2024 BOE Budget Workshop meeting?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Anybody have any comments, questions, things they might want to change? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the minutes from the February 3rd meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Now, next is the approval of the minutes of the February 5th, 2024 BOE regular and budget meeting. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Anyone have any comments they would like to make, changes? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Now, next is the approval of the minutes of the February 6, 2024 BOE special meeting. May I get a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? I know several of us were not there, but those that did attend that meeting, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next on the agenda is consideration of the superintendent's report. Superintendent Greeter.
Yes. So are you on professional?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So we have 2 appointments, 5 resignations, 3 of which are effective at the end of the school year. You'll see that more as we get to the end of the school year. This report, when it comes to resignations, whether they might be individuals that are only for this year or are here for long-term positions, things like that, or they're, moving on. That's what we typically will see. And that's part of the conversation tonight when it comes to the budget and teacher turnover. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Can I ask a question, Bill, on that?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Between the last 2 meetings, I think there was a resignation of a security officer at East Farms. It's actually like the second in the last year and a half. I didn't see it on any of the agenda items for last meeting or this meeting.
You wouldn't. That's a non-certified position. These are only certified resignations.
Okay, so I thought we've included that because I remember the last one resigning and I thought that was in the minutes. So we've never included non-certified in here?
Because Kim does this report, so it's always on the certified side.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Deeper learning update.
Yep, and our deeper learning, there are many accolades and exciting updates within our deeper learning update. You will, again, as we get towards the end of the year, especially at FHS, many of our students are receiving different awards and scholarships. So you'll see individual awards, group recognitions, and unique learning experiences within the update. I don't know who was able to go, but the Addams Family Musical at FHS was really a tremendous success. IAR's crew continues to be a time within the school day that provides our students with inspiration, teamwork, and deeper learning experiences. The community medical experts and Northern Regional Musical Festival are also highlighted at IAR. Students at Westwoods created artwork and artist statements to convey meaning in their work. Their artwork is displayed at the Farmington Library and reflects social issues that students wanted to share with an audience, an authentic audience, for their reflections. At Union, 4th grade students are math mentors to kindergarten students, and at East Farm, 2nd graders are working on anchor tasks, math anchor tasks, collaboratively, which is reflective of a book that we've all read, Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics. I think at East Farms, you had a chance to be part of that. I think, oh no, maybe it was before December or in December, but just having lots of exposure to students working at doing board work and anchor tasks. West District shared their work in exploring extreme weather and its impact on communities and animals. And Noah Wallace highlighted Black History Month celebration by learning about change makers. So those are some of the highlights from this update.
Thanks, Kathy. All right, on to the next item on the agenda. Item 6, unfinished business, budget impact, budget update.
All right, thank you very much. The big agenda item is actually the new business next will be our big budget impact, budget update as we do some work together on that. Just a couple brief updates. We're in the midst of contract negotiations with the FPSEU, as everyone is aware, so we're hopeful that we can have something to bring forward to the board in the months ahead, but we'll continue to work on that. In addition, something I've kept the board updated on, and as well as our team on the ad hoc committee, just less about budget for this year, but looking forward, we've been in contact with our partners at SLAM. As many of you know, the work of that committee in the meeting form is done, and so in May, SLAM will join along with inviting members of the committee to come forward and share the findings and updates for that. So those are the two big ones. And then I think the team, really appreciative of our team across the district as we've continued to remain hard at work with the budget. We've had an opportunity to engage with the council, as many of you know, and thank you for your support through that, and have some directives this evening in terms of some things to think about. And so those are my updates, unless anybody has any questions for any additional information.
Anyone? Okay. Thank you, Scott, and thank you for all your hard work throughout the budget process, you and your team.
Thank you.
Okay, item 7, new business. Approval of possible 2024-25 Board of Education operating budget reductions. Before, I guess, Kathy, do you want to just
Sure.
give us a presentation a little bit about how we got here, and then we'll go into the actual motion and have some conversation if we need to.
So you'll remember that the board approved a 5.97% increase over the 23-24 budget level. We had gone to the town council, presented our budget, and then spent a couple of hours going section by section through the budget to discuss, and then at the very end, discuss possible reductions that would not impact students or programs and also personnel. That was the hope, but generally when we look at reductions every year, we try to keep them away from students to the greatest extent possible. So if you go on to the next slide, we need to get to a 4.75% increase. That is what was approved by town council last week. We did give town council some areas that we would reduce. We do have an opportunity in self-insurance. We have a joint self-insurance policy that we share with the town. We typically don't reduce self-insurance without reaching the level of the town council because it's a joint reserve that we have, and we also have a policy that we both adhere to. So prior to the meeting that we had with town council, Scott and I met with the town manager, assistant town manager, and the director of finance, Joe Swetke, and talked about where he thought we could go with the self-insurance reserve. And so he felt that we could, now I'll let you know, the self-insurance, we may have talked about this a little bit in our budget meeting, but we have to be through the kind of self-insurance standard would be that we would always have between 25 to 35% of our total insurance budget in a reserve in case we were to have a situation where we have some catastrophic claims that although we used our consultants and Cigna to come up with projections for the next year, anything can happen with self-insurance, so we keep a healthy reserve. We are above 35% in the reserve, so Joe Swetke had felt we could take 500 out of the reserve, 500,000, out of the reserve. So we knew that going into the town council meetings. And we also have $150,000 for the increase for self-insurance, and we would bring that down to zero. So what you would see is $650,000 reduction in self-insurance. That doesn't mean that we're not accounting for our trends analysis that was given to us for next year. It just means that we're going to bring the reserve down to the policy level, which is the top end of the policy level, right? We're going to be not at 25%, but the top end around 30 to 35%. And so that would be the first reduction, which, we're very fortunate that we're in a position that we have been careful with our reserve over time. And this pretty significant cut to a budget would be very different if we didn't have that policy in place and also had been managing our self-insurance reserve over time in a really highly effective way. The next would be to reduce an end user position. As you might remember, we had a 1.0 end user position that was $50,000, and we would start this position in January of 2025, making it half the amount. So we're cutting out $25,000 of the $50,000 for that position. This would have an impact on the 25-26 budget because we would have to put the other half of that salary amount in that budget.
Plus a full year.
Yeah, as a full year. So we're already having our base 25,000, so we would be adding another 25,000 for next year to fully fund the position for a full year. Very similar in the next item, which is to reduce security residency position and the clerk by half by starting those positions in 2025, which again would have an impact on the 25-26 budget, and that's of approximately $70,000. It's a total of $140,000, so we're cutting that in half, starting the position at the half-year point. Teacher turnover, as we had put in $150,000 in teacher turnover. If you remember during our budget, we would do another $50,000 underfunding the account by another $50,000. In curriculum and professional development, we would reduce that account by $17,755, again, underfunding the account, which would have an impact on the 25-26 budget. In supplies, a reduction of $30,000, again, underfunding the account, which has an impact on the 25-26 budget. In major projects, we would postpone the East Farms ceiling phased project for $34,000. We would postpone the project for 1 year. We've been doing this project over many, many years, and so the next phase would be postponed for a year, and then it would have an impact on the 25-26 budget. Chromebooks, we would reduce by $26,000, underfunding that account, and there would be an impact on the 25-26 budget to get to the amount that would be required in the 25-26 budget year. Website services, these are just savings since the last time we met and went over the budget. That's a reduction due to analysis of costs related to the new website. As you remember, we moved from a national vendor to a local vendor for our website, and there is savings there. Natural gas would be an $8,000 reduction, again, reduced due to current market projections. So we would have total reductions of $924,755,000, which is 4.75% increase over the 23-24 budget level.
Any questions, anyone? All right, Kathy, I'll start, and then people want to jump in after. If I ask a question that prompts you to have a question, please feel free to chime in. The residency clerk and security position. I remember there was a 1.0 FTE at one point on one of these slides. That's no longer here.
Right. At one point, when we were thinking, when we talked to Joe Swetke about our self-insurance account, and again, we do that in collaboration with town council, and so we typically would not make reductions until we reach that level, because it could be, I mean, we are by lowering the reserve, even though it's within policy, it's a risk, right? So we have a joint account, so we always want to be very collaborative with our town manager, our assistant town manager, and our director of finance. So we had thought it was a 500,000, taking 500 total out, but he clarified that it's 500,000, and also we would reduce, so we really thought it was 350,000 plus the $150,000 increase, but it was really 500,000 from the reserve, and then we zeroed out the increase for self-insurance, making it 650. So we actually were able, that's $150,000. So we were able to then not take a teacher out for class size, which would have potentially increased class size at the elementary level. So we were able to say, well, we won't reduce in that area. We were also able to bring the end user into a half-year position, because that also would have been something we wouldn't have achieved in the coming year.
So, I mean, is there anything, we talked about this during the process about having that position start July 1, as opposed, is there anything we could do to make that happen? Or?
It would require a $70,000 cut somewhere else.
Okay.
And, we probably, the only way we could do that would be a position. And Kim, I'll have Kim just speak a little bit about class size at the elementary level. She has done some analysis with, what we have right now for enrollment and projection.
Okay.
So one of the requested positions was at Westwoods. And in looking carefully at where they are, I would say that that's a necessity. The position in the budget for Westwoods is a necessity. And as well, the position that was earmarked for first grade at Noah Wallace, if we were to not include that in the budget, then we would have pretty high class sizes in first grade. That said, we have 2 non-deployed positions in the budget, as we typically do, to account for the volatility of enrollment. And we say non-deployed, meaning we hold the placement of those teachers until we see where we need them most. So the wild card this year is really in kindergarten. Given the legislation changing the birth date in kindergarten, we're not really sure exactly what to expect. We're right now in the process of doing those assessments with children from families who would like us to grant them a waiver this year so that their children can attend, even though their birthday falls after the requirement. I think our stance just generally is to be as inclusive and accepting as possible. This was kind of sprung on families in a way that didn't give them a whole lot of time to think about it. So therefore, I'm not really imagining that there will be this huge dip in kindergarten enrollment. But again, we're not sure. Some families will choose to keep their children home for another year or in preschools for another year and come back. So there's some possibility there that we could say, well, we're pretty sure we're going to need 1 less kindergarten teacher somewhere in the district. We have some low class sizes at present, but that's because we're still in the registration process. I am seeing, however, at 2 schools right now, we have either a grade 3 or a grade 4 with class sizes of 23s and 24 right now. So additional families moving in, that is why we have these non-deployed teachers. Right. So that should those, class sizes creep into 25, 26, we can deploy a teacher there. So those are 3 grade levels in 2 schools that I'm kind of watching closely.
Okay. If for some reason it turns out that the enrollments don't turn out where you may not necessarily need that 1 deployed, would you be able to allocate some of those funds towards the security?
I think if the board were to say that's something we would want you to do, then we would definitely do that. And the challenge is we really don't know until around August, but we could bring in the residency / security person and clerk. We could bring them in earlier than January, but that would be something that, you would say, that's something we'd be interested in. I would keep you in the loop on that. I would let you know if we were going to shift funds to those two positions. So we could definitely do that.
Well, I think this is what I kind of want to open us up to the board a little bit, because this was a conversation that we had when we presented and when we were asked questions by the council about various positions, various asks that we had presented and put forward, and indicated this is an area that we thought was really important, and that we had came before with it last year, and for reasons we all understand, could not come forward and be put on the budget. My personal feeling is that this is a position that's of critical importance, because I see it as a cost saver. And what I said to the council when we were presenting was, this person, the challenge for us is when we have students that come into district after the budget's ratified that have some significant special ed needs, we're financially responsible for them. And there are occasions, as I understand, where some of these students, special ed, who have special ed needs, may not necessarily be Farmington residents. Mm-hmm. And that is an opportunity for us to save a significant amount of money. And so from my perspective, I feel like people coming into town that don't live here, that don't pay taxes here, that avail themselves to our school, is interacting in a way that I would rather them not be part of our school community. This is an opportunity for us to kind of really tease that out and make sure that we're doing it right. And we have an obligation to Farmington taxpayers, frankly, to make sure that that's happening. And this is the most efficient way, I think, for us to do it. So, again, speaking, probably for myself, I feel like this is something that we should have. If we can, say to Kathy, we'll approve this, but I want to keep this in the back of your mind, please. If there's an opportunity to find savings elsewhere, this person really ought to start, if we can. These two positions really ought to start July 1. I don't know how you all feel about that. Angela?
Kathy, can you give us a sense over the last 3 years, how many residency cases have come up where we have found students that have not lived in the district? And then can you tell us how many open investigations, I don't know the proper term, that there are currently for cases that you're investigating of this possibility?
Yeah, I would have Scott talk a little bit, because that would be more Scott's area. Right now, the way it's structured as our Director of Special Services is overseeing residency issues. So if there's a concern, it's brought to our Director of Special Services, and then our police department assists with that. When it comes to security, right now it's our Director of Facilities and Scott, and I would say Matt probably takes on some of that as well. And we work very closely with the Farmington Police Department. We're so fortunate in that regard. So this would be, combining those two areas together.
So I was actually asked a similar question with the council, and I wish I could give you, a firm, hard answer on that. I don't have those numbers. I would say it is most definitely challenging with all the other work that our Special Services Department is engaging in. So oftentimes, as a principal, I engaged with the same, when Dr. Singer and I worked together, I was the principal, I would call and say, hey, we're noticing, sometimes it's noticing like patterns of tardiness or students that miss the bus quite often and then are coming to, those are like, those amongst other things could be signs or signals, but I would say a handful of cases each year, sometimes with the partnership and an active investigation, and other times, I guess I would say coincidental happenstance of something either, unfortunately sometimes students they're awesome and honest, and sometimes they'll say, hey, I'm having trouble getting to school because I'm coming 30 minutes, those kinds of things will happen. But again, I have to acknowledge that it's not a robust system that we currently have in place, hence the push towards it. And as I mentioned to the council, our police department is a great partner and certainly help and assist with residency. The other component I think that's really valuable is right now, families, it's a convenience, I think, for families too. When they come to register, they will have a central registration point. They'll still interact and engage with their school to onboard. That's an important part of the enrollment process is meeting the secretaries and meeting your principal and getting a feel for the school you're attending. But having a dedicated team that can consistently review. The other component is, families complete residency affidavits. And so, as you can imagine, with all the other demands in the school, there's certain checkpoints along the way where one should be following up on those. And I don't know that that's happening with Fidelity everywhere, and this would be an office that could dedicate themselves to that. The other thing I offer to the council is we've studied models in other communities who have moved forward with this practice. And again, I don't have a firm number, but I can say that, I'll give West Hartford as an example, obviously a much bigger town. But last year they have a director, they have 3 office staff members. They added an assistant director last year to the position who we know well and communicate with. And they're out every single day doing this work. And there's no reason to believe, again, based on my experience in this role and as a principal, it's happening. But I would say it's probably a handful or a little bit more than that. But again, sometimes it's principals who are conducting these investigations. And again, they should be managing our buildings and doing the important work that they do. So I hope that helps. I know it's not a firm answer, but it gives you a general gist of how that work is happening or not happening for that.
I think, I just want to jump in real quick. I didn't want to underemphasize the significance of the security component of this position too. This is also a point person for us to deal with law enforcement in a way that takes that pressure and responsibility off the individual buildings. There's a central point of contact, and I know our security audit recommended that we have a position like this. So I did talk about, and it's important, I feel very strongly about that, having been a part of this board of some very contentious residency issues and over our past. But the security piece of it is just as important, frankly, and another reason why we should have that position filled as soon as possible. That's my feeling. Nadine had her hand up.
Well, you stole my thunder because I was going to say the same thing around the
sorry.
security. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
No, I agree. I also think a big cost savings is to the staff that's doing like schools, pieces, your job. Like, I think you'll find a savings there as well. I do feel passionate about this role too, or these 2 roles. And quite frankly, we are a little behind, as you alluded to. Kathy, my one question is, so the 2 positions, it's $70,000 to start in January. So hypothetically, if it doesn't start in July, would it be $140 then the following year? So
Yes.
$70 for each
Yes.
role. So even though one is clerical.
No, one is actually paid more, so.
Oh, okay, that's what I was.
Yeah.
So like,
About
but the
9
total would be one.
We're on a little bit on the low end, but we looked around and studied, these positions really vary from district to district. And so we did a salary study of that as well. And think it's a fair starting point to grow the position in that department but we feel confident that we'll be able to handle that based on kind of what we've looked at for districts similar in size and how they're setting it up. But yes, the coordinator is in the 80 to 90 range, and the clerk is in the around $50,000.
And I do agree on the July timeframe, especially with the brand new school coming in and diverted, roles working on other things. I think it's going to be important to keep an eye on who's
That's a good point.
here, really here.
Anybody else? Everything? Okay. All right. With that being, that conversation was great. I mean, I wanted to kind of have that conversation before we went into the motion, and then obviously we'll have an opportunity for additional discussion while we consider the motion. But because we're doing what we're doing, and it's coming off of what the town council's action was, I kind of wanted us to have a conversation just, before we actually did some formal action on it. So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the 2024-2025 Board of Education operating budget reductions in the amount of $924,755 as presented.
Motion?
Second,
Second.
any further discussion? All those in favor
Oh,
signify
wait,
by...
I have a discussion.
Sure.
So I was just going to read something quickly. So I'd like to start by saying I'll be voting in favor of this motion tonight for the amended budget. But I do want to share some concerns and frustrations I had with this budget process, and I'd like this on the record in an effort to hopefully improve the process for next year. I came into the budget process with an open mind, and as you all know, not short of questions. We had an initial target from the town council of 3% and a budget presented from the superintendent at 6%, obviously a wide gap to try to bridge. Maybe there was a little extra in salaries, potentially benefits, maybe the coverage we had put aside for the new bus contract. I wasn't sure, but was hoping to see where we could reduce our increases to creatively find ways to try and bridge this gap. What would a 3% look like, and what would a 4% look like? Rather than work collaboratively to try and reduce our increase, the majority of us decided to pass the budget to the council as presented at 6%. While I'm obviously not privy to everything that transpired over the last month, it's my understanding that the council worked in a creative, bipartisan, and collaborative manner with our Board of Ed chair and superintendent to reduce our budget increase to 4.75% without negatively impacting our students and without laying off any Board of Ed staff. I asked myself why we couldn't have done this as a Board of Ed. We could have worked with our superintendent to come up to the same number, a number that Kathy said just tonight agrees won't negatively impact students and won't compel layoffs. What is the point of having an elected Board of Education if we can't work together and come to these compromises ourselves? Finding out tonight the specifics that get us to the 4.75% seems like there could have been a better process. I understand completely in previous years that previous Board of Eds have worked on cutting the superintendent's proposed budget only for the council to make further reductions. I think that said, the way we did it this year greatly reduced transparency for us as Board of Ed members and didn't adequately represent the needs of all our residents. As we saw tonight, $1 million is coming out of the budget, yet before coming into the room tonight, I don't think anyone knew exactly where that was coming from. Again, I'm voting in favor of this because I think we've done enough research to say that this is a reasonable compromise, but I'm respectfully requesting that we all reconsider the process for next year. So,
Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now I need a motion, this is some reason why we do it this way, to approve the revised amount for the grand total of $79,544,240.
Motion.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, the motion carries. Okay.
Oh, this is only an FYI. The 24-25 capital improvement budget isn't something that you're going to
Right.
approve after reductions. It is the town manager's capital improvement plan, but we just wanted you to know where we were reducing the capital budget to get to 1.1 million. So cafeteria equipment, we took out all of that for 108,000. Technology, $200,000 decrease, and we're going to postpone purchases for all of these items for 1 year. School security, $250,000. MEP, $89,250. The IAR generator project, we will postpone for 1 year for $140,000, and then structural architectural, $224,000. These are, whether it's the operating budget or the capital budget, none of these the recommended reductions would be something I would recommend. I brought a budget that we needed, but I also understand that the town council is our fiscal body, and, they've reduced our budget, so we have to reduce these areas, and, those are the recommendations that we brought to the board.
Okay.
Kathy, can we get copies of the
Yeah, I was
previous slide and this slide?
Sure.
Whenever.
Yep.
Put it in my.
Okay. Next, I need approval of the actual budget, operating budget. So I need a motion for the Farmington Board of Education, recommends to the Farmington Town Council a 2024-25 budget of $79,544,240. That reflects a total increase of $3,607,018, or 4.75% increase over the 23-24 Board of Education operating budget.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, all. Okay, next item on new business, approval of new policy and policy updates, first reading.
The policy committee met last week to review one new policy, several updates to policies, 9 altogether, and several repeals of policies that are out of date, redundant, or not necessary. As you know, we're working with Shipman and Goodwin on reviewing our whole policy book. So the policy committee met and recommended these policies move forward to the board for a first reading.
Eric, anything you want to add to that at all?
No, thank you, sorry. No, I reviewed the policies again. I do have one question, is that okay? Can I ask one question? On the policy regarding recess and play-based learning, and I apologize, after I went back and looked one more time, I don't remember, I know that there's one section that was added which was new about increasing play-based learning, which I think is great. There was one particular part of the policy in the earlier part that spoke about not taking away recess as a form of discipline for pre-K through 5th grade, is what my understanding. So I just wanted to ask how does that get then, because it sort of said that the Board of Ed would then adopt these, or we have to define anything further? It looked like they provided the language for that.
Yes,
but
that's been in place.
Oh,
That
okay.
part has been in
Okay.
place. So we've been implementing that for quite a number of years, right? Yeah,
All right, it seemed like there were some new things in that.
it might be something they're adding
Yeah, I thought
here,
there were
but,
some things
but
added there about, like, so for example, when I was reading it, it added, it seemed like it added some stuff around not anything beyond, like if there was no more recess beyond the 20 minutes. I don't know, it just seemed like it added a few things to that I didn't.
I think it might have given a little window to take recess away, because I think it was a very clear line that you could not take recess away for disciplinary reasons. And then I believe there was a slight change to the law that gave a window where in certain circumstances you could, from what I remember, but I'm going to just look to see if they have anything listed here. So it adds the new place-based learning requirements for preschool through 5th grade. Beginning in 24-25, each Board of Ed must provide for play-based learning during the instructional day of each regular school day for students in pre-K and kindergarten. Teachers who instruct students in grades 1 through 5 must be permitted to utilize play-based learning during the instructional time of a regular school day. They revised the policy to include these upcoming play-based learning requirements. The new law also includes a definition of recess. Maybe that's where it comes, which is incorporated throughout the policy. Finally, we have made minor technical revisions, but nothing substantial when it comes to that, and we've been implementing that since it went into law several years ago.
Yeah, and for the most part, all the other policies that are being, were mostly cleaned up and added some language about AI, which is very seen there. And then in the sense of the retention and disposition of records, there was some information there around the electronic, well, they removed the word electronic information and more replaced it with retention of electronic records. So for the most part, it all looked fairly clean.
Thanks, Erica.
Can I ask a follow-up on play-based? Sure. For the play-based learning, so I'm a big proponent of outdoor exercise, recess, play-based learning, like 100% on board. I do find it a little contradicting, though, in terms of what we're executing. Like, I know from last year to this year in elementary schools, the total amount of outdoor time actually decreased. It went from 2 recesses to 1 recess, but the actual total amount of time outdoors actually decreased in that change. And I personally don't actually think that was communicated to families at all. You kind of just figured this out as you talk to your child. So I'm just trying to connect here. Like, we're making a new policy saying we're promoting play-based learning. We want the kids to get outdoors, 100% on board. But then on the same token, we're reducing outdoor time. So how do we reconcile that? And can we discuss, additional outdoor time? I know the kindergartners have that additional built into their day where it's true play-based learning, but the other grades do not at this point. So how are we actually going to implement this? And I guess why did we decide to reduce outdoor time if the effort is to get the kids outdoors more?
So I'll have Kim answer that question.
We had a long discussion about this at our elementary pathways group meeting. I think we only implemented 2 recesses during COVID and when students were much more restricted in their movement in the classroom. Play-based learning doesn't only signify learning outdoors. It's play-based in the classroom. And so I think as a group, the elementary principals, they're very challenged with the length of the school day as it is. We try to, we try to accomplish so many goals in reading, writing, Spanish, social studies, science, all of that. And so they made a decision that at the, beyond kindergarten, certainly, they would try this year with one recess, but also ensure that teachers understand that students should be experiencing lots of movement during the school day in their classrooms, sometimes moving classroom to classroom and regrouping. They were just really, we were looking at curricular numbers of minutes, the demands of the curriculum, and making some, choices about what we really needed to do.
Okay.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, any other questions?
I do have just
Sure.
one minor question. On the 5119, on the homeless children and youth, is the age supposed to extend beyond to 22?
I wondered that too.
I think it says to.
Wait,
it's
say it,
supposed to
which one
be-
again?
I think it's the homeless children, 119, 5119.
119, the homeless children and youth?
The age, does it need to be extended now that the school?
This particular policy, the 5119 homeless children and youth, the only change that is happening here is the U.S. Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights recently released 2 fact sheets regarding protecting access to education for unoccupied children or migratory children. In light of the fact sheets, they revised the model administrative regulations to specifically address students who are English learners, multilingual learners, and families who have limited English proficiencies. And then there were some technical revisions, but nothing other than that.
But in the wording, I think in the actual policy, the age, within the age, I can't connect to it right now.
I know, we're having trouble with our connection.
Yeah, I think.
Did it go to
does it
22?
22? Or is
Let me
it,
see this.
yeah,
So you know
or is it 23? What's our new age is 22, right? I thought I saw a date slightly.
It would just go along with Connecticut law if the student had an IEP that required, education to the 22nd year, really right before their 23rd birthday.
Are we tracking the question?
If that's what's in there, I would think it's just connecting this fact sheet to Connecticut law and making some technical revisions.
Okay, thank you.
I actually have a comment on that section, that the 2 new paragraphs that are added, 10 and 19, which refers to the English language learners. All the other paragraphs say something about homeless children or youth or unaccompanied youth, but this just says ensuring that students who are English learners get the programs and services. It doesn't say it in a way that ensuring that homeless or
Who are
yeah,
English
like for consistency, it seems like it should say that.
I can definitely just give that, we can
Yeah.
look at that, and just for consistency purposes, we can make that change for the second reading.
All right. And I had one more. In student discipline, it goes from A to H, and then the new generative artificial intelligence, AI, goes right to A
Okay.
and B.
So I'll check.
Just the
Mhm.
lettering.
I actually had a comment about student discipline as well. Bill, is that okay?
Sure.
As the new clause stands in that first paragraph, it says, where appropriate, the district implements strategies that teach, encourage, and reinforce positive student behavior that do not require engagement with the discipline system. To me, that statement is very broad, like this policy is specific for disciplinary action. So I would assume that that would have been taken into consideration before we got here. I just feel like we've heard a lot about parents not feeling, what's the action being taken. Like, this is just another clause, a very broad clause, that if an administrator wants to, they can get out of a disciplinary action, which I don't know how I feel about that, given kind of the feedback we've been hearing from parents and just our students about, you know, and maybe I'm reading that wrong, so that's why I wanted to clarify, but to me, it seems like that's just another way to not use this policy, where, to me, that's what this policy is for. So can I just get some
Well, I'm going to
clarification?
jump in on that. First of all, these policies are brought to us by an attorney, okay? Attorneys that work in the world of education law. Secondly, the suggestion that that administrators would be looking for ways out of administering discipline, I'm kind of upset about that suggestion. That seems a bit inappropriate and frankly, anecdotal. And so if you want to make a systemic statement that Farmington administrators aren't interested in doling out discipline, you're more than welcome to make that statement, but I'm going to consider that out of order.
Okay, I'm sorry you feel that way. That was definitely not a systematic approach. I mean, I'm asked to review a policy and there's new verbiage on it. So where appropriate, that clause there, to me, I don't understand why that would be there, but
Bill?
I mean, that's fine if there's no explanation for it, or I mean, that's my opinion. I was asked to
You're-
review it, and
Yep.
obviously that's my comment to it, but
And your
I mean,
comment is part of the record.
yeah, it's fine.
Anyone else have any comments?
Bill?
Yes.
I just think along those lines, maybe the discussion for a newer board member might be that, you know, the policy committee brings forward to the board new policies that have been recommended by Shipman and Goodman and other administration. We discuss that with the superintendent and we bring it forward. But also, I think what you might be getting at is a doubt that these policies, which are also the way our educators and our administrators work in our district, based on their experience and their education, I don't think it's appropriate for us to get to a policy on that granular level and bring that forward as a doubt for how our administrators and faculty
Okay, all right.
operate the district.
All right, I'm going to call the vote. Do you have the time?
You go to the motion.
Yeah, go to the motion. Okay, next one, yeah. Can I get a motion to approve the policy updates and new policy listed below for a first reading?
Motion?
Can I get a
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm
Opposed?
going to say nay, just because I'm not comfortable with the commentary, but I'll review it again and try to get some additional information so I can be on board for the next reading, hopefully.
Great, yeah, it's first reading.
Yep.
Okay, motion carries. All right, next up. 7B, approval of policy repeals, first reading.
So I mentioned at the very beginning when we were going through, the policy repeals are policies that either are not required, they're redundant, or they're inconsistent with other policies. Since we do use the model policies from Shipman and Goodwin, and they're always up to date, and our attorneys are the ones that are crafting these to align to federal and state law. We, at times, have other policies that had been created at a different time that then don't get updated, even though the laws have been updated. So we really wanted to clean up our model policy book. And so these are policies that have been reviewed by Shipman and Goodwin and are either, like I said, not required, redundant, could be out of date, or, you know, with the current law. So that's why we have this long list. One of the ones that I think the board might be interested in is the police and schools. I think some of you were on the board when we updated this policy. And now that we are required to have, and we always had an MOU from very early on, because our police department goes through accreditation. And because they go through accreditation, that is one of the requirements when you go through accreditation. You have an MOU with the school district. Well, that now has become a law, that all school districts must have MOUs. So really, we don't need this policy any longer because our MOU is much more detailed and very, very specific. It gets updated pretty regularly, given, you know, recently we now have a comfort dog. So we had to add a clause in our MOU for the comfort dog. So as things change, whether it's in Farmington or statewide, that MOU is updated. So that's why really this policy is no longer needed or required and is out of date.
Anything you want to add to that, Erica?
No.
Any conversations, questions, discussion? Angela?
Again, just because I'm asking to vote on this and my name is attached to that vote, I did read through all of these and some of them, seemed like good things to have just, for personnel. So totally get it if it's a repetitious or if it's a duplicate. Can we be provided or can I be provided with, if it's a duplicate, where is it duplicated? Like what policy does this encompass within itself? Because I would hate for, I don't feel like I have enough information now to know, like, if you're saying to something as simple as a personnel job description, well, that seems like something we should have, so I'm assuming that's covered somewhere else, but I wouldn't want to vote to repeal something that I don't know is covered in another document somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, most of them are just not required, and we are trying to streamline our policies to the required policies. So most of them in this particular list are just not required. Others are federal or state law. We follow federal, state law. You don't really have to have a policy to reiterate that. And again, it isn't a required policy, so it's not going to be updated by Shipman and Goodwin, and then we could have out-of-date policies. Trying to find one that might be redundant. There was one, I think, ages of attendance. Here's a really good example, 5112. In order to avoid inconsistencies between policy 5112 and 5113.2, and to ensure compliance with new law requirements such as the kindergarten entry age, we recommend that the board repeal policy 5112. So that's one example of a redundancy, and two policies that are in conflict with each other, and so we don't want to have that. So it's cleaning the book up. Hazing is another one, 5131.91. This policy is not required, and they recommended repeal. Really, this is covered in policy 5131, student discipline. There's an actual section in there. So again, this would be out of date because the laws change. I think 5131 is probably the policy that we update the most frequently at the board table. So most of them are just not required. And then I gave you two examples of, policies that are in conflict with each other, or one policy is being updated regularly and this one isn't. So we just really want to have the most up-to-date, clear policy manual that possible. So that's why we had this whole project. That's really, Scott and I think it's taken over a year now, meeting to, try to achieve that.
So the redundancies that one you read, and I might have just missed it, is that in, if I clicked the link, that was in what was there presented to us, or you just knew that? I'm just trying to understand.
Oh, hazing?
The ages of attendance. So I'm just trying to follow the path here.
We actually questioned it because right now we're implementing a new age for kindergarten.
Yep.
And when we looked at policies, we saw that one had a different, it hadn't been updated because we had two policies basically saying different things.
Okay.
So during the policy review, that was a question that was raised. Shipman and Goodwin did review it and felt that they recommended a repeal because the one that we're repealing for a first reading is not accurate to the current state law. And we have another place where that resides, as I mentioned. So.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to, after identifying the below policies which are unnecessary and redundant, the board approves the repeals of these policies at first reading and moves them forward for a second reading?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm going to say nay again until I have further information.
Okay. All right, thank you all. Next, consideration Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations report. Scott.
All right, so we have, we'll stick mostly with February. I'm certainly happy to discuss either month. I'll just pick a couple notes out there. So we have our financials, so we are up to date right now and ready. Hopefully we'll continue on that pattern. I think the themes that we've been discussing and the patterns that have been emerging with our finances have held pretty steady. So you're seeing additional savings in the teacher line, and that's really because and again, something that I was just at a gathering with secondary, or not secondary, with administrators for human resources and business and finance, and we're seeing a continued increase in leaves across the state. So the need for, that's why our substitute line continues to grow. And so over the month of February and March, depending on as we get more information about our educators and our folks who are on leave, we potentially could continue to release encumbrances on those salaries back in, while at the same time, you'll see movement on the other end as we acquire substitutes to fill those positions. But I think that balance is something we'll have to continue to attend to, and we've been discussing for several months, so I wanted to call that out. The similar areas where we see additional overspending that we continue to apply revenues to remain. We did have a shift in one of our tuition lines that deals directly with our tuition to educational service agencies, and that's related to services that are provided at one of those schools. That just added up. That was an additional $100,000 or so through the month of February. I will call to your attention, as you look at the insurance as well, we had a swing off of our projection in January, but as Kathy alluded to earlier, a single high-cost claim can really swing that. We went back on track in February, though. But those are a couple things I'd call your attention to. I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
So,
Can we just have a copy? Like, it's hard for me to follow. That was not included in the agenda. I'm not sure if that was just a mistake. Can we have that included?
It usually is.
The financials?
Usually is.
That is not
Typically in it.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was intentional or just by mistake, but, okay,
That's
yeah.
not intentional,
I
no.
just
What
was
do you want?
curious where it was. You were reading off it and I double checked. I'm
No,
like, did
if-
I miss this?
No,
But
we'd have to wait. So we'll
My
wait
apologies.
until the next
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
That is something, I reviewed both, and they're supposed to be in the packet, so I don't know what happened. I will have it for the next one.
Yeah, no
Table
problem.
both of them then. That's absolutely right. And I don't have my computer, so I just was taking it on faith that you all had. the
Yes,
print out.
yes.
So we'll table both of those until our next meeting. Okay. Next up is the report of the board chair. So obviously tonight was an important night. We were able to come together with the town council and come upon a bipartisan budget that I think we can all support. I will say that our town chair, Joe Capodiferro, was a great partner in these conversations. He was transparent. He said what he meant, and he meant what he said throughout the process. He was open. He listened. And I thought he did a really good job in finding a way to understanding our challenges, given what had happened last year. And so I was very pleased to be able to bring back to you all the budget that we had kind of worked on collaboratively with the council. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your patience in the process, your effort in getting the budget, working on the budget, and your participation in the process. I really appreciate all your work. There will be no meeting on April 2nd. There's just not much of an agenda at this point in time, so we will not be meeting again until April
20, hold on.
22nd.
Is it the 22nd?
22nd. So we're meeting again April 22nd. Since we're not meeting on April 2nd, there are no opportunities for committee reports. Marty, I know, reached out to me before our meeting. He had something he wanted to bring to the board's attention regarding green efforts.
Yes, on April 20th will be the annual cleanup day, and there'll be prizes for the heaviest competition. And it was suggested to see if maybe the elementary schools get together or the high school clubs or whatever to participate in it.
Yeah.
And show some interest. That was
For sure.
brought up at the meeting, so that's all
That'll
I.
get out to the schools, right?
What day was that again?
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah, I mean, historically.
April 20th.
Historically, we've had a pretty good turnout.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention, Marty. Okay. And I guess about it, I guess. Motion to adjourn. Motion. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.